Have you ever stopped and wondered what happens to a god when there's nobody left to pray to them? Well, today we're basically becoming historical detectives. We're going to uncover the incredible stories of faiths that have just gone silent. So let's dive right in.
I mean, just think about these names for a second. Zeus, Marduk, Jupiter. These weren't just characters in a story. They were the center of entire civilizations. You had Zeus on Mount Olympus, Marduk ruling over mighty Babylon, Jupiter is the king of the Roman gods. We're talking about billions of people over thousands of years who lived and died by what these gods represented. And today, nothing. Just silence. Which brings us to the big question. Where did they all go?
Okay, so to crack this mystery, we've got to get into the minds of the experts. We need to see how historians and religious scholars actually classify these belief systems. It's not random, they've got a specific toolkit they use, and it all kicks off with one really simple but super important distinction. So here's how they break it down. On one hand, you have what they call living religions. Pretty straightforward, right? These are faiths with active followers right now. Think Islam, Christianity, Buddhism. But on the other side of the coin, you've got silent religions. These are the ones where the last followers are long, long gone. We're talking about the gods of ancient Egypt or the Aztec pantheon. The key thing to remember here isn't how old they are. It's whether anyone is still actively practicing the faith.
But, it's not always so black and white. It's not always just alive or dead. Sometimes a religion gets into this kind of middle ground, a twilight zone that scholars actually call semi-dead. A perfect example of this is Zoroastrianism. I mean, its followers had dwindled to almost nothing, a ton of their sacred texts were lost, but then through the hard work of modern researchers, it's been brought back, at least partially. It just goes to show you that the line between a living faith and a silent one can be, well, pretty blurry. So right about now, you might be thinking, all right, this is kind of cool, but why does it matter? I mean, really, who cares about a bunch of gods that nobody believes in anymore? And that is the perfect question to ask. Because the answer, well, it tells us something really deep about our own world right here and now.
Well, the experts point to two big reasons. First off, if you really want to get a complete definition of what religion even is, you can't just look at the major faiths we have today. Nope, you have to look at the whole picture, every single belief system from the tiniest ancient tribe to the biggest, most powerful empire. And second, and this is where things get really interesting, these silent faiths didn't just disappear without a trace. They left behind echoes, these hidden influences that are actually baked into the religions that millions of people follow today.
And check this out, because this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. This is a massive aha moment for historians. So, when Cyrus the Great, the Persian emperor, freed the Jewish people from their captivity in Babylon, something incredible happened. Their beliefs rubbed up against the main Persian religion of the time, which was Zoroastrianism. And scholars say that because of this contact, huge ideas, we're talking resurrection, paradise, hell, angels, started to enter Jewish religious writing. Those ideas, of course, would then become foundational to both Christianity and Islam. Just think about that. A now mostly silent religion played a role in shaping the biggest faiths on the planet. Wow. So, to really see this in action, let's go on a little tour of the ancient world. It's time to open up the case files on 3 massive civilizations and get to know the gods they left behind.
Okay, first up, Babylon. And I mean, what a powerhouse. For centuries, this place was the absolute center of the universe for science, culture, you name it. And the religion? It was ancient, evolving for something like 4,000 years. It started out with these simple beliefs in nature spirits and grew into this incredibly complex system of gods and goddesses, with the supreme god Marduk sitting right at the top. Now, the Babylonians had a ton of gods. So many, in fact, that to make any sense of it all, they grouped the most important ones together. They basically had these 2 main trinities. The first one was this cosmic crew that ran the whole world. You had Anu for the sky, Enlil for the air and war, and Ea handling the water. Then there was the second group, a celestial bunch. Shamash, the sun god, Sin, the moon god, and then the amazing, powerful goddess Ishtar, who was in charge of both love and war. Talk about a portfolio.
All right, next case file. Let's head over to ancient Greece, or Hellas, which is what the Greeks actually called their homeland. And their number 1 god was, of course, Zeus, the father of gods and men. But what's really wild is that you see this type of god, this archetype, popping up all over the place in different cultures.
He was Dyaus Pitar to the ancient Hindus, and later Jupiter to the Romans. The names are different, but that central idea of a big, powerful sky father god, it's incredibly consistent.
And the Greeks, well, they were absolute masters of myth. It's so important to get what myth really meant back then. I mean, this was way before science, before we had formal philosophy. Myth was our first real crack at answering the biggest questions of all. These were not just bedtime stories for kids. They were complex, symbolic tales trying to explain everything, from why the sun comes up every morning to the ultimate mystery of what happens after we die. And this is where we see a huge shift, a real turning point in how humans think. So if myth was the first shot at explaining the world, what was step 2? How in the world did we go from stories about gods chucking lightning bolts from a mountain to, deep philosophical investigation? Well, that leap came from guys like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And what's so cool is they didn't just trash the old myths. They actually used them as a jumping-off point, a launch pad. They looked at the huge questions that the myths were asking, but they tried to find answers using logic and reason. Take Aristotle, for example. He came up with this concept of a prime mover, this abstract, perfect, unchanging source of everything. That is a giant leap from the very personal, very human-like, and frankly often flawed gods hanging out on Mount Olympus. All right, for our last case file, let's go to Rome. Now, we usually picture Rome as this huge, complex, sophisticated empire, right? But its earliest religion was, well, it was surprisingly simple, almost primitive. Long before they borrowed all the Greek gods we know so well, their beliefs were focused on something way more basic. And that something was a concept called numen. Basically, the early Romans believed that everything had its own separate animating spirit. Not just people, but every tree, every river, even a doorway had a numen. This wasn't about gods with big personalities and dramatic backstories just yet. It was just this feeling, this acknowledgement of an unseen power in everything. It was only later, over a lot of time, that these abstract spirits started to get names and personalities and eventually grew into the major gods we recognize, like Jupiter and Mars. So let's recap. We've seen Babylon's super-organized pantheon of gods. We've seen how Greece moved from myth to philosophy, and we've seen Rome's journey from simple spirits to powerful deities. All of these faiths are silent today, but they all spring from the same source. There's a single driving force that connects every single one of them to every religion that has ever existed, including the ones around today.
And this is it. This is the core, the engine that drives the whole thing. If you strip away all the details, all the different names and stories, religion is really just humanity's way of trying to answer a few absolutely timeless questions. Where did I come from? Why do I have to die? And how am I going to get what I need to survive? Every single myth, every ritual, every god, from Marduk all the way to Zeus, it was all part of a huge, complex attempt to answer these fundamental human worries.
And really, that's the big takeaway here. The names of the gods, they change. Empires come and go. Religions can be born, flourish for millennia, and then just fade away. But those deep, fundamental human questions that sparked them into existence in the first place, they never, ever go away. They are just as real, just as urgent for us right now as they were for some priest in ancient Babylon thousands and thousands of years ago.